right, good afternoon. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners. Commissioners check-in for Monday, July 22nd, 2024. It is 2:04 p.m. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. Vice Chair Fournier is excused this afternoon. Or no, he's on the Zoom, sorry. So Commissioner Fournier, we have Commissioners Mejia, Edwards, and Klaus here in the boardroom. County Manager Leonard Hernandez and Assistant County Managers Robin Campbell and Rob Gelder. Public virtual attendance is available on the Thurston County YouTube channel. We're here till 4:30 if necessary. First up is a standing item, reports on external boards and commissions. Commissioner Fournier, do you want to start? Can you hear us?
Yeah, sorry, I have no report.
Okay, Commissioner Klaus?
Let's see, so I have a TCMC meeting tonight, so that's upcoming. Last week I had
TCM?
Thurston Climate Mitigation Collaborative.
Oh, yeah.
Last week was the first subcommittee meeting for the education subcommittee for the Board of Health.
Okay.
And that was really cool. We talked through quite a few items. We kind of talked about a little bit about like how the education and outreach subcommittee might overlap with like the data subcommittee, depending on what we all decide to do. Like we talked about potentially doing some sort of survey, and then it was like, well, if we're going to talk about surveys, let's make sure we're being careful about like overlap with the data subcommittee. So we had kind of some of those conversations before we get into the nitty gritty of what we might do. I thought it was a really good meeting. We had 2 members of the subcommittee present, and then 2 people were absent. So it's kind of a smaller meeting, but I'm looking forward to the next one. And I was appointed as the lead of that subcommittee. So I'm really excited about that because I'm super interested in that work. Let's see. I also had Law and Justice Council last week. That was also a really good meeting. It took the full hour and a half, and like, it felt like at the end we still had a lot we could have talked about, but let's see, without going back into my notes to see if I can remember. We talked a little bit about the DCYF juvenile stuff, and what's going on with the state not taking any more juveniles into the state prisons. I don't think they call them prisons, but you know what I mean. And the 43 youth that were transferred to local jails. I think that they went to DOC in Shelton, and there was a potential hearing that was coming up last week, and I didn't follow up after that hearing, so I'm not sure how that went, but there's a lot of conversation about that. And I also met with some constituents about that as well, and they had some concerns that they shared with me. So, but yeah, we also talked about like the PSA, I think it stands for Public Safety Assessment. There was quite a bit of information shared about that as well. So that was really interesting. Let's see. I also had the BHASO meeting last week with Commissioner Mejia. That one was in Shelton. And I also we had RHC executive meeting. And I think that's it.
It's good to have Leah back for Law and Justice Council.
Definitely, yeah. I'm really glad that we can convene again.
Commissioner Edwards.
Maybe I'd just follow up on Commissioner Klaus's meeting with the state, basically not following the law. And I know our judges, I met with them on Friday, and they're concerned that the state's just kind of doing their own thing with no real authority on this whole juvenile matter. So others are concerned as well. I just thought I'd mention that to you on our bench. And that's it for my report.
Okay. Commissioner Mejia.
Okay. For me, did a building 1 tour with County Manager Leonard and showed him around our old stomping grounds. And so he got to experience a little bit of what it was like to be in that building. Attended the Sandy Flats ribbon cutting, and Commissioner Klaus and Menser were in attendance as well. Had an intercity transit meeting, and we had a variety of public hearings, and had a BHASO meeting, and also did a tour of the Silver Spring Organics. Hadn't been there in a while, and so it was great to see some of the upgrades they've done, and just kind of how their operations are constantly improving. Had a policy subcommittee kickoff meeting with Commissioner Menser, and it looks, hopefully we get more members on there. And then also did a Lake Lawrence boat tour. So thank you to the Lake Lawrence community members for taking me around Lake Lawrence and showing me around. And over the weekend, I just did a variety of community events. And then today I attended the Law Library Board meeting. And then just as a heads up, in terms of DCYF, WASAC, both LSC and Board of Directors are going to be discussing in future meetings possible litigation. So once that is decided, and depending on how that conversation goes, I know Commissioner Fournier will probably report on LSC, but I'll report back from the Board of Directors meeting. And then I heard this morning as well that the Superior Court Association of Judges is also possibly seeking litigation. So there might be litigation from various sides on this. Yes. So there might be litigation from various sides on this. So I know that we'll report out as we hear more information on it. So with WASAC, we'll see kind of what the concerns are that are laid out. And I think the LSC meeting is Friday, and then the Board of Directors meeting is Monday, and the Board of Directors is the body who authorizes whether we're going to enter litigation or not. So I will confirm on Monday whether we are entering that stage or not.
Is IT still on track to pursue those service levels in September?
They are. Yeah.
Counting down on days.
Yes. Yeah.
Good to hear. Okay. For me, lots of stuff. I'm not sure what's of relevance to the board. Did my fairgrounds tour. Met with a member of the Racial Equity Council who had some interesting comments, and I hope to meet with DV and follow up on some of those. I went to Public Defense Day over at the Office of Public Defense, the state, Office of Public Defense, which is down in Olympia, in that building on, I forget, what do they call that big white, where PDC is, that big white office building on Capitol. Anyway, they're in there, and there was a really nice presentation by Larry Jefferson and the team from OPD, with some folks who had like success stories and stuff from some of their programs. So that was good. Community event, steady meeting. That was a presentation from the Experience Olympia and Beyond. They have a new report out. I forget what they call it, some type of a specific strategy report that was pretty comprehensive. You should take a look at that. It's on their website. Also with Commissioner Mejia, I thought it was similar to Commissioner Klaus. I really kind of enjoyed the Board of Health Subcommittee meeting, just kind of parsing through like, what should we be doing, and what, you don't want to do nothing, so you want to, which is easy to do, and it's such a broad topic, so you really have to talk about how you're going to make things proceed in an orderly fashion so you can do something productive. And I thought we got some good ideas thrown out and some good next steps from the policy standpoint of like sort of us being sort of a catch-all for policy ideas, and then kind of hearing from staff, and then kind of distilling ones that are maybe ripe for consideration by the full board. Just sort of being a vetting of like lots of different things and trying to present some orderly options for the Board of Health as a whole to talk about what they'd like to move forward on, if anything. So anyway, we talked through all of that. One of the more interesting conversations that Leonard was there for was with the City of Olympia about detention. Ultimately, we've talked about a regional jail, but kind of a baby step would be to potentially have a pilot with the City of Olympia. They're going to talk about that. They seemed interested. The next step is going to be a an actual tour with from officials from Olympia, including the mayor, with the leadership of the jail, to have maybe a presentation and then a tour of the jail facility.
Existing jail?
Yeah, of ours, so that Save Olympia could see with their own eyes what they would be contracting for, and then dedicate a small number of beds just to see how it works for all parties, and then, that might lead to other partnerships and ideas, so.
Anything new at all then on that regard out to the tribal jail out in Nisqually?
I was really fishing for that information. It didn't sound like there was much new. Like I asked like, have you, with the new council in Nisqually, have you heard that there'll be anything new? And they really hadn't heard anything. They hadn't met with the new tribal leadership, but hadn't heard that anything was going to change. They do get more programming in that jail than they were getting in their own jail because they were so small in Olympia. They really just couldn't offer much. So they, would want to see that we would be able to offer as much or more. And I think we will. I think we do, and we'll be. But we're going to prepare a memo. I think was the idea is Sheriff Sanders was going to share some of the programming we have, and that way Olympia could kind of compare and contrast. Hey, here's what we're getting from a Nisqually for what we pay, and here's what we would get in Thurston County. So that would, yeah.
I guess that came up when I was talking to the judges too.
Okay.
So what about other jurisdictions here locally participating in something like that? Did that come up as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, right now, we're talking to Olympia, and our numbers are creeping up slowly in our jail. And beyond the numbers, we have that historic problem of like the facility's not really matched to the population. So we don't even really want to get back to full capacity because of the problems it had with women not having the same access to recreation and all those problems that we dealt with pre-COVID. Yeah, the flex unit, the lack of a flex unit. So we want to start really small because we do have capacity, and then my thought is if trust is built, then we can start a conversation. Like, we're going to need additional capacity of some kind, however that looks. And so talking through that, this is kind of just a baby step, as I said. And yeah, eventually we would want to bring the other jurisdictions into it.
There is something going on out of the tribal jail, and it's pretty hush-hush. I don't know. I can't even give you any blush about what it might be. There's others that are talking about it. So I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's new leadership or what.
I mean, I asked about back a couple of years ago, there was talk of Nisqually seeking to sell their jail, and Olympia had thought that was not, they were not aware, they thought that was, idea had gone by.
Yeah, from what I've heard, it has. It's not
on the table anymore.
It's not on the table anymore. So I think a pilot with one of the jurisdictions, right, is a good way to start off and seeing like if things align, if values align, and seeing kind of having the other jurisdictions also see, because I know there's also, the conversation of trust. And that's what kind of came up at the mayor's meeting when we brought this up. It was a conversation of values, a conversation of trust. And so starting off with a pilot with one of the jurisdictions, I know in a large scale, like I think there is interest, but there is also hesitance from the jurisdiction. So I think starting off small with one of the jurisdictions, seeing like if this is a possibility, then it will give us an avenue with the rest of the jurisdictions and to really start a little bit more seriously about the regional corrections model. But it also gives us the abilities for us to assess what the needs are going to be once we start letting another jurisdiction in, right? Like, how is that going to affect our programs, our staffing levels, all of our different needs? So it also gives us that opportunity too. So I think it's a good approach.
One of the things we learned in the conversation that I hadn't quite understood was that back when Olympia was closing, at the tail end of their jail being open, they had like 10, 12, 16 people. And so I was assuming that was their normal population. That was an artificially low population because their jail was in such disrepair. That's the only amount they could have in there. Now they're up to like 70. Now their city manager says they think that there's been kind of a shift and they're talking with their judge. And so they kind of think that that's artificially high. They think that their normal population under normal circumstances, like right now they don't have their community court fully operational and stuff. So they think that that's artificially high. They think their normal amount would be like 30 to 50, which is higher than, what I was thinking when I thought it was 10 or 15 people. So when you think of, if you think of 30 to 50 from Olympia without looking at Lacey or Tumwater, and our jail is only like 390 total capacity, and challenged even at that capacity because of the structure. Lacey's going to have as many as Olympia. They don't even have the community court. Maybe more. So, we're going to have capacity expansion, and that has to be funded.
Which I guess this brings, I'm not sure if Commissioner Klaus and Commissioner Fournier know the history of the flex unit and kind of everything that goes along with that with our jail. So I think it's a good recap to have, for commissioners who've been here, and then also for Commissioner Fournier and Commissioner Klaus to kind of have a recap on the flex unit, kind of what that means for the jail, why we keep talking about that, how it came to be, and especially as we're moving towards, just a pilot with other jurisdictions or a regional corrections model, talking about that need as well and having that need kind of brought forward for the full board to have a full understanding on it, I think is important.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite.
Sheriff Sanders he talks a lot about, he's really excited about the idea of having additional capacity go in the direction of behavioral health, and have some sort of county, almost like a county-run mental health hospital connected directly to the jail.
Yeah, you did mention that.
He's mentioned it multiple times. That's why I feel pretty comfortable just bringing that forward. I think he's been talking about that consistently, and I do see a value in that in some ways, especially when you're if we need to ask the voters for funding. That may be something that voters are much more interested in funding than just, jail space, which is not ever a very popular thing to ask for funding for. So thinking outside the box could be something we have to do in order to get this problem solved.
I also think that would be a good time for, not sure if Leah can bring up an update on the study that the state is doing in terms of, I know we submitted our flex unit as, and there were other jurisdictions who submitted their numbers as well. So they were kind of doing a study on kind of the jail needs across the state. And so kind of where they're at on that study, kind of what to expect from that. Maybe an update at that time as well would be good.
Are they still actually trying to put that together? Because that's kind of been stagnant.
Well, they're doing like the state is right now collecting all of the information. So that's kind of what they've been in the process of doing.
Okay.
Yeah, so WASAC was going to put something forward in terms of requesting an amount, but when it came out to an extremely high number in terms of infrastructure needs across the state, they decided to take a step back and instead ask for a study from the state, right, to kind of assess all the needs. And this number did not include the needs of King County, if I remember correctly. It was just for the other counties, and it was in the billions. And so we've kind of been waiting on the results of that. So maybe having Leah reach out to one of our WASAC lobbyists and kind of get some information for that briefing would be good also.
I think that's all I had. So I guess we can move on to the next item, which is Grays Harbor ORV.
Yeah, thanks, commissioners. We had an opportunity to go out to the ORV site that straddles the county in Grays Harbor. And we had a wonderful time touring the location and looking at the opportunities. I know that Commissioner Fournier and Commissioner Mejia were able to join us. And so at this point, Grace Harbor is interested in continuing the conversation and talking through conceptually what their plans are and how there might be an opportunity for the county to partner in that.
Do we want to give some history to the rest of the board on kind of how this conversation came to be?
Sure, please do.
I was going to give it to you, but okay. So Grace Harbor reached out because first they had reached out about stormwater fees in regards to this property and seeing if those could be waived. After discussing that at length with Public Works, we just couldn't do it. And so after that, they kind of came back with another proposal. They were looking to make some investments, capital investments in the property, go out for grants. And they were asking about the permitting and if permitting could be done, you know, just on the Grace Harbor side, since the property, I believe it is 64 acres are in Thurston County, and
It's a fairly equal split.
it's a
Yeah.
fairly equal split. It's around, I'm not sure if it's, but it's split between Thurston County and Grace Harbor. And so they were asking if they could do the permitting for it. So at this time, Commissioner Fournier and myself brought staff into the conversation and seeing what that could look like. But we also wanted to have kind of a bigger conversation of like what it would look like for Thurston County to also invest in this property and seeing if there were possibilities for recreation and seeing if Grace Harbor was open to that conversation, and they were, and so they invited us over to the property as County Manager stated, and kind of showed us around and brainstorming some ideas. So this is kind of where we're at now.
How was that permitting conversation left?
So we didn't kind of dig deep into it because we wanted to explore this option first to see if the board was interested in seeing if, you know, we wanted to move forward with a partnership with Grace Harbor. And
So remind me, right now it's some kind of off-road vehicle thing, but this master plan that you attached here looks like just like a standard campground.
Right, so right now, you know, commissioners, it's closed. It was a off-road vehicle site some years ago. And they concessioned out to an operator to run it who's no longer operating it. What they're looking at is to transform the park into something that would generate higher use and more revenue. So what we provided you is what they provided to us, which is a very conceptual build out of some campground space to bring in some revenue. I think the opportunity we have is to engage with them to look at what's the future of that park, and is there larger development opportunities there. I know that Grace Harbor side has a couple of commissioners working with staff. They're going to have a meeting. They've invited us to come to that meeting just to sit down and talk. Again, this is just conceptual because when we went out there, they showed us that this is what they've spent some time looking at, but they're really looking at any options or any opportunities. We don't know what those are because they haven't really fleshed them out. And so the invitation is really just to come and brainstorm with them to see if there's something that both counties would want to partner on.
What's its zone to be able to be? I mean,
It can be the RV, full motorbike business, Jeeps and stuff, et cetera, et cetera.
And there's currently some pads for camping out there. They're just not very developed.
But I think probably it's a spin-off of, if you notice every once in a while, you might see an ad of come to Grace Harbor County and do X, Y, and Z. You want to go to the beach or.
Yeah.
I think they want to, their vision, I believe, is to include that as another activity to offer up to the public for not only for activity for the public, but for economic development.
And so in this conversation, Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Fournier kind of helped staff with that handoff and that connectivity. I think that Grace Harbor, in the conversations that staff have looped in their commissioners just to make sure that folks are aware. So we're doing the same thing, but there's really no commitment at this point because it's simply a conversation about is there a potential to partner? What would it look like to develop a site where there's multiple recreational amenities, campsite, potential concert venue, potential continued off-road. They have an opportunity with the mountain bike trailhead at Capitol State, is it Capitol Forest? Capitol Forest, to develop something there as well. And I think our interest is, since it's half in the county, half in Grace Harbor, could there be amenity opportunities for our county residents as well?
What does it look like right now? Does it look like is it a blight that needs to be, something needs to be done, or is it just kind of fine the way it is if nothing happens? It's just an opportunity, or is there like, like with Tumwater Brewery or something, it's like people specifically want you to do something with it because it's ugly and...
No, it's not blighted. I mean, the racetracks are overgrown, but they're not overgrown in a way that...
It's right off the freeway, right?
Yeah, but from the freeway, you don't see any blight.
Okay. So it's the status quo is not a problem. It's just, is there an opportunity?
Status quo is a problem for Grace Harbor because they've received some grants from the state, I believe,
RCO fund.
that require it to be in operation, or they'd have to pay it back. So they're wrestling through.
And they don't have any money to pay back.
Right, so they're wrestling.
So 2025, I believe.
So they're wrestling through what's the future of it.
I see what's going on. Yeah, I mean, that's the motivator to
Yes.
move something forward.
And I think they just don't want to have it as just
Closed.
closed or as just an ORV park. They want to add more amenities to it, which that's kind of the part that interests me. Of course, we don't want to take on the liability of an ORV park. So the fact that they were interested also in kind of heading a different direction or adding more amenities to it, such as a concert venue or just different, that to me was like, okay, well, that's an interesting conversation to have because we don't have any amenities like that in Thurston County, really. And so, also the fact that it's like right at the entrance of like Capitol Forest is pretty great, especially for camping. We don't have any campgrounds like that in the area. And that kind of access that area, so.
And the state expanded, I believe, if I recall correctly, the parking facilities on the north end of Capitol Forest for the mountain bikers.
Yeah, so now there's a developed parking lot, and they get quite a few visitors that go through the RV park up to that point, and so they're looking at potentially capitalizing on that.
Commissioner Fournier?
I'm where Commissioner Mejia is at. I think, this is an opportunity to explore, opportunities and, see what we're not thinking about, see, kind of what fun, interesting, creative ideas can come out of this. The amount of mountain bikers that go through there is pretty extraordinary. And then I really liked when we did the tour, it was right after we had a tremendous amount of public comment about the future of Capitol Forest and what the highest best uses are for Capitol Forest. And there was a lot of public comment about recreation and a lot of public comment about access to the forest and how it has higher, better use as, outdoor, public space in some instances. And there's very few, base camps or trailheads at the bottom of Capitol Forest. And this is, to me, a great opportunity. I think it was mentioned 150 acres there that is already set up for a lot of camping. We could have concert venues, like was mentioned. There's a lot of potential here, and I would love to see us, partner with Grace Harbor, but at the very least be very, very solid supporters of their efforts.
Commissioner?
I guess to follow up on Wayne's comments, first of all, I'd just bring attention to what Wayne was able to accomplish as the mayor down in Tenino, and the park, swimming pool, all the things that he put together down there. I think first of all, we ought to make him in charge of this. And then secondly, I would be very much in favor of allowing Grays Harbor, if we reach that agreement, to be the permitting entity to make it all happen, rather than trying to split it up between us. And I do think it's got some real potential. And I suppose we got to talk to our legal folks and, liability and all that kind of stuff, but it really is no asset now. It should be utilized. It could actually produce revenue.
So I feel there's a lot of potential there, Commissioner.
So
So,
that's my 2 cents.
we plan to engage with Grays Harbor in those exploratory conversations and, obviously, bring anything back to the full commission. If there's any ideas or thoughts about what the partnership would look like, but at this point, it's just a exploratory conversation.
I'll give my thumbs up for staff to move forward into those exploratory conversations.
Yeah, me too. 3, 4,
4 thumbs.
5 thumbs.
5 thumbs it is.
Sorry, to match what Grace Harbor is doing, I would recommend adding 1 or 2 commissioners to those conversations.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, Matthew, that Grays Harbor has at least 2 commissioners that will be part of their conversations. And so if it's the commission's desire to have a couple of commissioners, I know that Carolina was out battling her allergies when she was on the trails, like a true trooper. And Commissioner Fournier was also out there, and as Commissioner Edwards mentioned, his creative ideas about recreation, I think, helped spur some conversations when we were out on tour.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need 2.
It's up to the commissioners, whoever.
Commissioner Fournier is obvious. It's my district, so I guess I should probably, if there's going to be a second, it should probably be me, but if there's only need 1,
As long as we live stream all those meetings.
Hey, you never heard me say anything about that.
Yeah. Commissioner Fournier, are you comfortable leading that conversation with staff?
Yeah, I'd love to participate in that.
Okay, very good. Anything else in this item? Commissioner Edwards?
No, not on this item.
Okay, then we'll go to Commissioner items, our last item of the day. Commissioner Edwards?
Is there an update about, I don't know if it's the Clallam County litigation on this whole tree thing with DNR? There's something new percolating, and I don't know all the particulars. I thought maybe you might know. Or
Travis
some
sent an email.
dismissal or something?
Yeah, so, well, we have our litigation regarding a particular cut, but then there was an argument added in that this would actually apply to all, the argument could theoretically apply to future scheduled cuts if it were accepted. And so that declaratory judgment was thrown in there, and the court severed that off and declined. It said, no, I'm not gonna, I'll rule on your thing, but I'm not gonna say that it governs all these other future cuts. So it just narrows the litigation to the cut that we objected to, which is carrot. That's what was ruled upon.
So now it's narrowed down to one thing, one cut
For now,
for now. When's that supposed to happen?
not for a while. If I remember, his email said, it was a couple of months, I think.
Right, it wasn't imminent, but
It wasn't imminent.
I'm
This year.
getting a lot of inquiries yet about that whole funding source with junior taxing districts and the adverse effect it has on it. So that's why I'm asking kind of where we're at. I'd heard that there'd been that dismissal or a partial dismissal, it sounds like maybe.
It would, if we were successful, it would limit the scope of what it would apply to. We'd have to argue in a subsequent, we'd have to argue that it applied to some other cut as well, but that was just the update that we got from Travis. Yeah, it could, the whole thing could be mooted by, the election in November.
Yeah, right person gets in that has made some commitments.
Yeah, and I heard a restatement of that commitment yesterday, so that candidate's continuing to pledge that there'll be a mature forest policy signed on day one if that person's elected, so we'll see how, and that would cause me to dismiss all the litigation, you know, that would satisfy me from where I sit, so that could change what we need to do and how we need to do it. Anyway, other commissioner items? Commissioner Fournier, anything? Nope, okay, I don't have anything. So that's it, we'll be adjourned. Thank you. Tomorrow morning at 9.